We're the ones behind the My Empower Instagram page and Twitter page. And our whole project is just about community awareness of gender bias against women. And that's really what we focused on with our DECA projects for the last 2 years. And so tonight is the high school girls discussion about gender bias.
This is just like kind of like a girls talk, kind of relating to how at least we feel about gender bias and how it's affected our society. I'm Yasmin and I go to Olathe South.
And I'm Maggie and I also go to Olathe South.
My name is Molly. I also go to Olathe South.
My name is Salma and I also go to Olathe South.
I'm Tracy and I also go to Olathe South.
I'm Nicole and I also go to Olathe South.
I'm
Brianna and I also go to Olathe South.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm Majay. I go to Olathe North.
I'm Rama and I'm a senior at KU.
I'm Yusra and I go to Shoreham-Wading River High School on Long Island, New York.
And I'm Maggie Bunch and I go to Blue Valley Northwest.
And I'm Rowan Farha and I go to Olathe South.
How has gender bias affected you growing up? Like, in what ways? And why was the bias there in the first place? So with these, you can kind of answer, you can piggyback on someone else's answer.
I'll answer. So I feel like gender bias and how it's affected me, I feel like I've always been, like, even when I was little, I've always been the type of person that's like, oh, well, why can't I do that? Why can't he do that? Like, because there's always these stereotypes that, like, I don't know, just a very simple one that, I don't know, girls aren't strong or something. So they'd like ask for guys to lift something. And I'm like, well, why can't I? Or if I wanted to like paint my nails or something, and then a guy, they were like, oh, I won't do that. It's like, why not? Like, it was weird that anyone ever thought that in the first place. And I feel like it's mostly there just throughout generations, like generations and generations of people have always thought these things. They've like ingrained it into our society.
Yeah, to like kind of piggyback off that, I grew up with 3 older brothers, well, 1 twin, so I was really around guys for majority of the time. So naturally I wanted to do everything they did, and it's like every single time I would try, they'd be like, no, a girl can't do that. Like, they would used to wrestle all the time and I would want to do the same. I would want to be like, I'm strong and stuff, and they'd be like, nah, you suck, you're a girl, you know what I mean?
I grew up in a Hispanic household, and just in general being like, my culture has always seen women as like they correspond with like the traditional womanly role where they belong in the kitchen and they grow up just to literally raise their children and just be a stay-at-home mom. And I think it came to change when my mom realized that this was a wrong mindset. Even my great-grandma was sold because her family didn't have like enough money, and so because she was a girl, like, she was just easily just given off.
For me growing up, I kind of have parents that instilled in me that there was such thing as gender bias. They told me because I'm a girl, I will be looked down upon and that I won't receive the same positions compared to men just because I'm solely a woman. So I was grown up being taught that I was going to have to work harder just to get to the same place as men. For me, when I think about where it came from, I think about, at least I know in Christianity, it's kind of the whole Adam and Eve thing, Eve being made from the rib of Adam. Some people interpret that as women being lesser than males. And so I feel like that's kind of perpetuated it. And I mean, there's different ways to interpret any type of religion. And some people choose to interpret that way. And I think it's kind of perpetuated this gender bias.
I want to piggyback off of Maggie's idea because, so I'm Muslim, and in most Muslim countries and like Muslim cultures, it's mostly patriarchal. So like men run the society and whatnot. So I guess like I have immigrant parents, so that mindset is instilled in them and it's been ingrained in their minds since childhood. And even my mom, who like is a woman, she's very highly educated, she still has like internalized misogyny, and she has different expectations for me as a daughter and my brother she was just always more lenient with my brother, because like, oh, boys would be boys, like they're just gonna go mess around, do stupid things, whereas I would try my best to be the perfect daughter. And the standard for a perfect daughter is just way higher than the standard for perfect son.
I was gonna add to that, you like kind of like relay the same story where I also have an older brother. Me and my older brother got into engineering. And so there's always that competition between us growing up. But then again, my parents were more lenient on him. And like I got into college and I'm finishing in 4 years. But my brother, who's 2 years older than me, because they were like so lenient on him, he still has 1 more year to graduate. So it's kind of like, I'm like, aren't you more strict on him?
I grew up with 2 Arab parents, but my mom was born and raised here for most of her life. But kind of opposite of what everyone else was saying about their childhood, I think I grew up with my parents pretty actively trying to raise us against sexism. So for example, like they would make sure that my younger brother, he knows how to do traditionally woman things like chores, which is obviously something everyone should do, but he's learned how to cook from an early age, kitchen skills, laundry. And I learned how to use power tools at an early age. And obviously they weren't perfect, but I don't think any parent is, but alhamdulillah, I was pretty blessed in that manner.
Have you ever combated gender bias yourself? Be like in your community and just like a really small just conversation with you and one other person, or really anything like that?
Growing up, my parents told me, they informed me of a gender bias, and they told me that my life was going to be more difficult because of the fact that I am a woman. And so I think, looking back on it now, I think I was kind of sassy, but they definitely instilled like an attitude of resilience in me as a young child. Like I would be kind of sassy and be like, no, just because I'm a girl does not mean I can't play soccer with you, doesn't mean I can't hold a stack of chairs. Like whenever the teacher would ask, could a strong boy come up and take these chairs to the next room, I'd be like, why can't a girl do it? I would just actively make a comment. I think I've kind of dialed back on it now, knowing as it's controversial in a way.
I feel like I combat it a lot with family, because I know I didn't talk about my culture, but in Black culture, a lot of people are very ignorant about problems that aren't our own. Especially like when it comes to stuff that isn't about race, people in the culture seem to be very not wanting to listen about other people's problems and things like that. We go very with stereotypes, and a lot of the new generation is trying to break that. And so I feel like I help that a lot with especially my parents and like aunts and uncles. They would say things like, oh, I don't like when men have like jewelry, and I'm like, why? But I also know that it's not always 100% their fault, because it's hard to overcome stereotypes that you've learned for your entire life.
Well, and even if you think that you haven't really done anything, just like you start with your family, right? So like with your siblings and your parents, like everyone said. So even if you don't think you have an example, I'm sure that everyone here has said something at some point that they've questioned, and that's always where you start, right?
For me, it's definitely in the little things with my family when I try to combat gender bias. Like it can be as little as like when I'm going to reach for the cereal bowl, we have like a blue bowl and a pink bowl. And sometimes I'm like, no, I want the blue bowl. And my mom's like, well, why don't you just let your brother have it? And it's like, well, no, if I like blue, I'm going to take it. And that's like kind of a sillier thing, but it's just one of those small steps you can take to kind of destigmatize that kind of thing. And it just came to mind. I forget the context, but I was talking to my brother and I was saying like, oh, well, you would probably be able to get away with more things because you're a boy. And he was like, wait, what do you mean about that? I just kind of explained it to him because it was just something that had never crossed his mind because he's a boy. And so kind of those little things with the family is like small steps to take to like further that.
Kind of going off like the whole family thing and gender stereotypes within family. My dad's whole side of the family is Lebanese and Syrian. And I don't know if like it's all around because I mean, I was raised here in Olathe. I have a white parent, so I am a white girl. But like that whole side of the family, it's always like the way they all act is the woman is always doting towards the husband. And I was always kind of paraded around as like almost an object to like meet everyone I didn't know because it's a giant family. Like there's hundreds of us. And then all like the boys and men could just sit and do whatever they want. after like Thanksgiving dinner or just regular dinners, all the boys would like go off and start playing games or go outside or go to the basement. And like starting from first grade, I was expected to wait in the kitchen until all the adults were finished eating and then clean up. And so finally, like in middle school, I guess I combated the gender bias, just like I stopped cleaning up. And I went downstairs and I got all the boys and I made them do it for me. Because that's not okay. Like it's something as little as washing, sorry, she's super loud. It's something as little as washing the dishes, but like there's so much more meaning behind that.
Like I remember going to like gatherings with like a huge Ethiopian Muslim population, and it'd be that same like the men are in the basement like playing games, things like that, and then like the girls are in the kitchen trying to get everything like ready to go. And I would always remember every time I was there like the topic of like what you're gonna do with your life. Like you need to take this path and this path only. I was like in 5th grade, you know, like why do you need to plan my entire life for me? And like you would see the like high school guys outside playing basketball, yet I was the one being told what to do. And so I think like a way that I've tried to like steer away from that whole idea is like proving them wrong, you know? I just like going back to those times, I'm actually glad that that happened to me because it's made me stronger.
For me, for like a way, like for like combating gender bias, I have a twin brother and we do like almost everything together pretty much. Like I can't ever see us apart. And like as we've grown up, like we have like shared the same interests in both things that are deemed feminine and things that are deemed masculine in like opposite order. So like Luke loves the color pink, like loves a lot of feminine things, like, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like I'm like the same way, like at the opposite spectrum. Like I love things that are deemed masculine as well. We kind of intertwine in that way. I have a gay brother as well who is more feminine in ways and more masculine in ways, and honestly doesn't identify with either, which I think is really cool and a really cool influence on my entire family because my mom and dad are both Catholic. My mom had that internalized misogyny as well with like being a, you know, pure Catholic woman, and like my dad, you know what I mean? And but like as we grow and as like Cole came out as gay and, you know, Luke started showing these interests with our family, we kind of flattened out that gender bias within our family, which is still there, but it's like less now.
Do you think gender bias is something that like we can quote unquote fix? Because like in my eyes, I think of gender bias as a system, and like it's a system so that people can go back and like explain why they act in a way.
Everyone's been saying like it's something they grew up with, it's something that's in your head, it's something that's in all of our heads, whether we realize it or not. It's not like it's a very slow process that can't just happen like overnight, that you can change all of that everybody has already like deep in their head.
I think that I agree. I think it'll be a slow fix just because misogyny is so deep rooted in society. It's everywhere. Like even women can be misogynistic as well. And it is like a really big problem, but I think that one solution would be like educate ourselves as a generation and spread more awareness on issues. I think that education is one of the best routes to go. Obviously, there are always going to be people who don't change their mind and they choose to stay ignorant. I think we've made a lot of progress in the past few years, but obviously we still have a long way to go.
I don't want to seem like the negative person here, but I don't think that sexism or gender bias will ever be completely gone. I think we can definitely combat it, and it can definitely be better, especially with educating each other and stuff like that.
I think that what Yasmin said when she was first starting, when she said that it is a system, I think that is part of the issue, is that when people first look at the issue of sexism and gender bias in our community, we immediately think, what can I as an individual do? And I think that's a good way to go about it. But I think that inadvertently puts too much pressure on the individual when a lot of these problems are institutionalized and stuff like that. I'll take the example of the wage gap, which you guys had posted about the other day, seeing that women make, I believe they make 81 cents to every dollar. I could be wrong on that, but it's something like that. And so fixing problems like those, that's where the implicit bias comes from. because a lot of times, like even if you aren't actively being sexist or something like that, there's still that internal thing. And so it will take a while, but the only way to accelerate that is by like seeking systemic change and institutional change, I think, in addition to like in your community doing what you can.